Patricia, I mean, we'll start with you. I mean, you've always been like a champion of leading diversity and inclusion, I think with over 2 decades of experience in that space. How do you actually see AI helping removing biases, mostly in recruitment, right? That's where the inflow starts. How do you think recruitment practices can be bolstered up by AI? And most importantly, the recruiters, the hiring managers, the leadership, how can they be trained towards that and in ensuring that there is inclusivity and diversion?
So that's a very interesting question for me, because the last company I worked for, it was indeed personality assessment company using artificial intelligence for personality assessments. And I would split the question in two. First is the perks, advantages and disadvantages, of course. The main potential that I see, and I was very happy to have this discussion as well with Mariam before, because AI for me has the potential to increase our potentialities as human beings, for example, in recruitment, to indeed reduce biases and support us. But on the other hand, has the disadvantage of it that, as any data-driven possibility, and it depends on data, right? The data is going to be as biased as the people working on it, or the data that has been acquired. But the potential that AI has in terms of reducing the biases and helping in recruitment, and this is already in place, and thinking here from the advantage point, is indeed to reduce those biases. And how so? For example, we know that most of the biases, or some of the biases that happen, they can happen in the names of candidates, in the picture of candidates. When the recruiters, they eventually see those pictures, they see these names. And I have someone in my network, it's a doctor from Canada, and his PhD thesis was exactly in the biases of recruitment. And he created 1,500 profiles. And it was very blunt that, according to the data, the profiles or the resumes that were created with identified white names had more chances of interviews, and so on. So that's, of course, one of the main possibilities that AI can help. And there are already some companies. I think I had a call with somebody from the Nordics that started working with AI for recruitment last year or the year before. And they indeed work with resumes that don't have necessarily a name, and they don't need a picture, right? It's peer skill. That's one of the main advantages that I see. It's when really it's an objective decision making, right? The AI is going to purely see the skills. If that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the data definitely contributes a great part to it, right? I think the amount of data and the quality of data that you feed, and that definitely results in the objectivity. Diljot, if we can go next with you. Again, you have worked with really high growth companies, some great brands, right? And the people strategy has been a core of what you've been doing. How has AI impacted, and have you tried AI-driven solutions, and what challenges have you faced, specifically with respect to bringing about equitable experiences?
Yeah, good to be here. Hi, everyone. I've had the pleasure of being around and in high growth companies now since about 10 years. And it's been a journey where I think AI has come to the rescue of organizations who do not have a lot of resources in terms of people to throw at people problems. So for sure, this is a technology that organizations who are growing, they want to keep their fixed costs low, are going to leverage. But it does come with a lot of ifs and buts, and we have to be very careful while using something like this to replace human judgment. I think AI has completely transformed people's strategies, especially in smaller companies, but I'm sure in established big companies as well, given the data is huge. But it will, I think, play differently in the amount of data it's fed. So in a smaller company, the data is lesser. In a bigger company, you will have a bigger variety of data. We've been using it for recruitment for sure. That is definitely one area where AI plays a big role. It can, though, replicate biases of interviewers, of the type of profiles we've been hiring. If you're hiring more in terms of, certain type of profiles, when you say, tell me my top 20 out of 150 LinkedIn applications, it does have a good chance of throwing at you similar profiles. And hence, I think the whole dichotomy of, are you hiring for culture fit or are you hiring for culture addition? Sort of plays, and that's where HR judgment is going to be key. Similarly, performance and development, I think it sometimes overlooks different styles of working, especially if that is not forming the crux of your already existing organization in a way. So diverse profiles, underrepresented profiles do not figure in AI suggestions in terms of a development plan for someone coming from a very different background. It also does not accommodate for disabilities, which is going to be something that is key for HR professionals to watch out for going further. I also think transparency of data in everything. So the way you're deciding your talent reviews or succession planning or cover ratios, keeping in mind where is this data coming from, being very sure about how is the model coming up with the suggestion that it's giving you, which today is pretty much a black box, I think, on exactly what it does to come up with those suggestions, which I'm going to answer for in a way if I'm taking that data to my business partners, I think is going to be key. So amazing technology. I think it's going to definitely help. We need to use it with caution and care, and then it can be very useful.
Have you seen it help mostly on the recruitment side of things, on the hiring side, or the whole post onboarding journey? Where has it kind of been more relevant to you, or where have you seen the real results?
So pre-recruitment, the type of effort it sort of removes is very different. It is sort of combing through hundreds of profiles and coming up with the top
Screening.
25. Yes, I think that definitely saves some time. Does it also sacrifice a few good profiles?
Yes, that's exactly what I was coming at, right? Yeah, accuracy.
It does. And hence, I mean, I would still say, okay, maybe spend a minute on a profile, but go through all the 500 applications that you have to my recruiting team. So it's not completely replacing, but I think it does give you a good starting point.
Even on the other side, right? Not just on the HR side, but from a prospective candidate trying to tweak their resumes to parse through ATSs or recruitment solutions that actually have these AI parsers. I think people have started optimizing a lot. And I think that's kind of biasing the data as well. Now people know to trick through these solutions, right, in a way. Right.
Exactly. And hence the output's not as trustable. At times, the system sort of throwing, say, 20 top profiles, and you actually find just one worth really talking to.
Exactly. Great. Thanks, Diljot. Ginger, coming on to you, I think you have been someone who has been reimagining workspaces and thinking very flexible models. I think even before COVID, if I'm right, even before the new normal or when we started talking about the future of work. So how do you see AI actually reshaping the experiences of employees and HRs, particularly in these modern workplaces or the more flexible workplaces?
Well, Varun, thank you for having me, and excited to be talking about this. I've been thinking about the way that we will be working for a very long time. In 2017, I started my company, Upflex. Essentially, what we do is we enable people to access space wherever they need it. But if you think about, today when we talk about employee experience, it's no longer about everyone sitting in the same office working side by side, right? Teams are spread across different locations, different time zones, different continents. We now have distributed teams working together, but often not sharing the same physical space. And this shift, it has been tremendous and hard to coordinate for a lot of companies. And if we think about it today, our workplace is our Teams and our Slack. We're digital first. We spend most of our time there. And so when I think about AI and the workplace, I'm really thinking about, how do we supercharge the digital workplaces that we are in? If we're working and spending most of our time in Slack and Teams and Zoom calls, how do we embed plugins or AI tools that help us optimize that experience? And so when we think about, Teams, many of you are probably using Copilot, and Copilot is fantastic. It's helping to kind of reduce that manual work that you may have done in terms of note taking and things like that. Zoom, there's fantastic applications like Read.ai, Otter, and many of these software tools are now not only just doing the transcription, but they're also looking at sentiments within a conversation, and they're prompting you. Read.ai is fantastic because it gives you a report in terms of, who was the main talkers, who were the people that didn't talk, and what are some coaching advices in order to bring everyone along. There's a fantastic platform that I'm looking at right now as an angel investor. It's called Toby. And as we are thinking about this new distributed workforce, language is a huge barrier in terms of inclusion. And Toby is trying to solve this problem where they're when you're doing Zoom calls, they're actually translating in real time in your native language as you're communicating. Oftentimes when you're like watching the UN in session and everyone's wearing their earpiece and you can have that conversation, Toby is solving that problem through virtual conversations. So it's fantastic to see, if a lot of people think of like AI as this massive thing that's going to happen to them, but we've been using many of these tools, and what's getting better is the connection of those data points, as Patricia was saying, that will allow us to understand more sentiments. I mean, there's lots of interesting applications where, you can feel the disengagement of your people based on the chatter and interactions that are happening within the Slacks and the Teams. But in the physical space, we're seeing really interesting technology come out. And one company that we've partnered up with at Upflex is called GoSpace. And what's really interesting about GoSpace is that most companies, when they're inviting their people back into the office, you actually have to book your desk, and there's all this friction point. And oftentimes what happens is you have people sitting all over the place and you still don't have that interaction happening. And so GoSpace, what they do is on a predictive level, they're able to actually assign seats so you can get the most interactions as possible within your physical space, which is a very exciting technology. And they've been working on this for about 8 years. So even though it's AI, it's taking AI, taking this immense amounts of data and being able to provide some really useful ways of connecting people within their own corporate offices. GridSense is another wonderful company that's taking the environmental aspects of your physical spaces and being able to personalize it. And this is really important when we think about sustainability. So lots of exciting stuff happening at the workplace stuff. But when we think about workplace, I think it's really important to think about the digital workplace as well as the physical. And at Upflex, we're solving the problems of actually physically trying to bring people together once they're distributed, because actually getting people together as a challenge is very difficult, and finding the right spaces for the right work styles that people need to do is also really interesting. And there's lots of companies trying to solve that problem.
Amazing. I mean, interesting to know how these tools and technologies leverage even environmental aspects that you said, right? And trying to kind of figure out how to balance the whole collaboration in virtual workplaces as well as physical workplaces, right? I mean, great to see how these have evolved. I'll just move to one of the questions on the Q&A here. There is one that is specifically asking about AI tools being utilized for offboarding, onboarding, survey feedback. Anyone who'd like to take it, Patricia, or someone who want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. I can share a few names of companies. It's by no means a publicity of them. And I don't have as an HR in-house experience with them, but I have been in several Slack channels with the people, the companies. You have Culture AMP, they're based in the UK. Lipsum, I saw that Margarita also mentioned in the chat. Lipsum is a German-based organization. There is another company, which name I read a lot is Higher View. But again, I have never tested them. If any of my fellow panelists has already tested them, as a user myself, I have used SAP SuccessFactors, but I don't know how much AI they're using in onboarding and offboarding. But as a user, I really like their tool, especially in the learning and development field.
Interesting. Great. I mean, as a follow-up to that, right? I mean, onboarding, offboarding, and especially during those phases is when employees need a lot of mentorship, right? And the leaders play an important part in kind of keeping them warm and getting them used to the new culture and all of that. And how do you think AI can be leveraged in those spaces, especially for mentorship opportunities for employees? And most importantly, when it comes to, say, underrepresented sections of the workforce, right? How do you think that AI can chip in?
Yeah, it's very similar to the first question, where are the opportunities for AI and where the AI is gonna mitigate the biases, right? And I think it was Diljot who mentioned also this, because I mentioned the perks, but are also the disadvantages. Very important to remember. One thing that I mentioned in the beginning, the same way as AI has the capacity to help us in reducing the biases, it has an increase, and fantastic, also not a fantastic, but a big risk to amplify that, because it's about data, right? And one of the main risks that I saw, for instance, in my experience working with the companies that are dealing with personality assessments, is where this data is coming from. How much representative of societies this data is. How are your data scientists or the people working with the data composed of? Are those groups representative of society? Recently, there was an article about Meta. I think the team of Meta on AI, if I'm not mistaken, was purely composed of white men. So of course, when you have those situations, you can pretty much infer that AI is going to amplify the biases, right? But then to your question on mentorship, this is quite interesting, as we STEM is a not-for-profit and we work for Women Excelling in STEM, is to bring or work with the empowerment of minorities into the STEM fields. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Math. And one of the programs we have is a mentorship program with Goodyear. We are in our second cohort. And the most difficult task we have, it's always the matchmaking process. We are using and doing it manually until now. Our goal is for the next 3 to 5 years, create a platform that is using data and AI to perform the matchmaking. And why is that? Because as much as we try as human beings, and here I'm going to go a bit into neuroscience, and I also heard that Margarita mentioned that, as the moment we live and breathe, we have biases. This is a fact. And it's a misconception, unfortunately, that many people, when we say that, say, no, I don't have biases. We have to, otherwise we wouldn't be able to survive. The amount of energy that our brain would need to evolve and to survive without having biases would be impossible for us to live. So we definitely have biases that are going to be in line to the societies we grew up with, or our environment, right? And as much as we tried, of course, by doing the matchmaking to avoid biases, we're going to have them. And that's one of the main advantages, that when, and here again, it's important to stress the when, the data is used properly, the representation of the people dealing with the data is fair to compared to society, when those factors are properly taken into consideration, AI has the potential to mitigate and reduce the biases. And how, if you're talking about minorities? Because then again, as a mentor myself, for example, let's say it's our natural bias, I will feel more comfortable to mentor people that are like me. And this is our natural survival capacity, right? Is our amygdala saying, look for those that are like you, because even though it's not a life-threatening situation, but this is how our reptilian brain, if you want to call it, or amygdala thinks of it. When we see people that are like us, we tend to resonate better. And this is one of the main biases. So you have that in the pictures. For example, I know that in US, you don't use pictures in the resumes, but this is quite common in Europe, unfortunately. You have also the names example that I mentioned in the beginning for recruitment. You are going to have the same situation in mentorship. As a mentor, if I'm going to select the mentee, it's a natural behavior or bias that I'm going to tend to look for those that are like me. And that's where AI has a big potential. It's going to be, again, very skill set, very peer decision-making oriented. You can do, like I said, the matchmaking, right? That is the most difficult part. You always will have, as a human being, that resume or that profile you're going to read, I like more this person for whatever reason, is our emotion talking. And for that, AI won't have this emotion, even though, of course, we can use AI already for sentiments, and we at Zortify, the company I was before, we're already using it for it. But AI is going to be decision-oriented. Nevertheless, and this is very important to say, many people, AI is going to steal my job. AI is a tool. You still need the human part of it in the end, right? You still will need the mentor that is going to be a human being. You still need the people that are creating the programs to see if that matchmaking is making sense. So that is my way of seeing in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's an amazing insight. The whole mentor-mentee relationship and how unbiased it has to be is a crucial factor on mentorship, and not just what tools can help me mentor someone, right? It's that whole relationship and the dynamics there between the mentor and mentee. Since you spoke about AI taking over the HR role or the jobs, I think it's very important for leaders, HR personnel, to not just look at that aspect, but to look at how they can add value to this whole AI HR integration, right? In the long term, automation will definitely help in productivity, but I think the transformation, the people transformation, can only come with the human touch, can only come with people interacting, right? Not just with AI, at least in the shape that it is today, right? Definitely not. I mean, talking about biases, coming to performance reviews, right? Again, it's the same manager employee or reportee relationship, and there are a lot of existing biases. I mean, Diljot, if I may ask you, are there any specific strategies or tools you have implemented for performance reviews, talent management, career growth and development, where you have faced challenges or where it has helped you in your role at SB Energy and your overall experience?
For sure, it's helped. It has helped in increasing productivity, at least at the initial stages of all the processes. It is easier to create trends from a large set of data. It is easier to digest it and reproduce it in a way where it's more impactful, and the receiver understands it better. But while we keep exploring the usage of AI more in our day-to-day HR life, I think having some sort of processes to ensure we are keeping AI sort of reflection, a good reflection of truth, is going to be important. Some things that companies and we've tried doing is doing some sort of bias audits in a way where you keep testing the system, as Patricia was saying, right? Say who will I choose as my mentor, and is it actually just throwing up somebody similar to you? If it is, then and you're aware of that bias, because I think awareness is key. whoever is using that data. And along with HR, I have also been leading IT for my company for 2 years now, without any formal IT qualifications. But I do have a very competent IT team that helps me and supports me to drive this. But I think it's not just in HR. Any tool, even if it is performance of a project, and then predicting and forecasting the performance of the same project in the coming 3 years, will be driven by what happened in the last 2 or 3 years. So predictive analysis itself is in a way biased and flawed if you only depend on data today. It will have to be judged by humans to say, or be given some more input deliberately to say, there could be other scenarios, or this is what is happening in the external world, which it should club with it. And AI does have the capability to combine input from, say, your own controlled environment, which could be your organization, and what's happening outside, and then give you an output. Or you may want to code it or set it up in a way where it is only talking about your own environment. So I think human AI collaboration is going to be key in using this. I think getting more understanding of algorithms and what goes in the background, how does AI give you output for users is going to be important. So educating users, how is this coming, so that when you read it, you know how to interpret it. You know what could be possible flaws in that data. And we are spending a lot of time in helping our users, or our entire actually companies' talent force, to identify, if you ask it this, which sources does it go and consult? Where does this data come from? So that, you're okay, I only provided these 3 data sources, I did not provide the other 2. So definitely it's going to show me, a very partial outlook on my question. That's going to be key. So not just using it, but understanding how is it working. So more transparency in how AI works. I mean, yes, especially for performance and development and for successions and talent reviews, I think keeping our lens inclusive as a human perspective is going to stay very important. This is going to be just one. So whatever AI produces is going to be one data point. You still need to know the human. You still need to know how they reacted in different situations, which AI does not have data for or input for. I think we keep stressing the importance of that through using, of course, use it for manual jobs, use it for non-value adding jobs, use it for, reducing your repetitive processes related work, but still apply your judgment. Ownership remains yours for anything that you produce.
Got it. We have been building AI assistants for performance review feedback and everything, but we are very, very particular that you can't generate feedback, right? You can only assist in kind of structuring it better, making the tone more professional and friendly and more caring. I think that's what we can do, but I don't think we can today let AI automatically generating performance feedbacks and all of that, right? We need
I
that.
agree. And even in feedback, there has been sandwich approaches. There have been give it direct and be candid, radical candor. There have been different approaches, and different personalities take it differently.
Personality, exactly, right? The manager's personality is very important. Otherwise, it's not going to it's going to be robotic, right? And that's not helpful at all. Yeah, very valid point. Great. Ginger, again, talking about remote, most of us work remote, and how have you seen AI tools kind of contribute to kind of maintaining that whole inclusivity and keeping people engaged, keeping employees engaged in remote or hybrid kind of setup?
Absolutely. When we think about remote, hybrid, distributed, whatever term that you use, when you have people working in different locations, they can start to feel disconnected. And it's really hard without having a layer of data that allows you to have a better pulse on your people. And so, there are amazing tools. Like I was saying before, the new workplace is the Slack and Teams. And within those environments, they're wonderful add-on applications that you can buy that encourages the ability for people to connect. I mean, through Slack and Teams, you can understand, you can see if certain people are just not engaging in the chatter, and certain channels are not at the level that you need your employees to feel engaged. And there's tools like Donut, which is an amazing sort of add-on feature on Slack, which allows teams to meet other people, that people to meet in your organization, to meet other people within your organization that they normally don't connect with. The other thing that's really interesting is, because we're on distributed and probably working on different time zones, asynchronous work is really important. The ability to still communicate with your team in an asynchronous way. And I think there's tools like Loom. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Loom. It's fantastic. You can do a video recording, and then, the recipient who's getting that video recording, or the team, you can do both the video recording, and it also creates the transcript. So you can pop both the video recording and the transcript into your Slack channel or your team channel. And it's a great way, it's another example of how AI can be used in these productive ways. I think the other thing that's really important and interesting is, with AI, there's this whole better understanding about work styles. There's applications that I just actually invested in, a company called Mattermore. And one of the things that they're trying to do is, everyone has a unique work style. And before, it was really difficult to identify everyone's different work styles based on different measurements, and being able to now understand how best to communicate with one another, and being able to actually communicate in the mode that the other individual appreciates and resonates with. That was difficult, because it was much easier to have you physically in the office, or you have a Zoom call, but not everyone can connect that way, right? Some people are more visual, and understanding each other's work styles now in this context is actually really interesting. And there's lots of companies that are trying to solve for this. And is another example where AI can be really helpful in making sure that your employees are connected. But I think I go back to what Diljot and Patricia have talked about is, a lot of how these informations are being processed is a black box, and there's concerns there. So when we're looking at these tools, we can't just let them go, install them, and let it go wild. There needs to be some monitoring and also training within the organization to make sure that people understand how best to use these tools and how they're meant, as opposed to just going wild with them. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah. And understanding of what goes under the hood is important. I think it's
Oh,
worth
yeah.
to learn a bit of it, and then figure out how does it work, and how can the human value be added to it, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I think we have gone over a round of questions. I would love to put this one common question to all of you. I think anyone who wants to jump in, right? Again, the million-dollar question, right? What ethical considerations should all of us have? Should organizations have? Should leaders have? Right? When adopting AI, when promoting AI within the workplace, especially when it comes to equity, inclusion. Anyone wants to go ahead?
I think, going back to what Patricia and Diljot said, one of the things that is really important to remember is, if you're building sort of AI automations within the organization, to really learn what is in that black box. And one of the things that, someone gave me an example yesterday, that, as organizations, we want to create our own knowledge base. And out of that knowledge base, we want to create our own AI kind of tool set. Oftentimes, you within the organization, you need to have a layer, a guardrail, where you have a team that's assessing and evaluating those, because the moment you change, it's like an Apple phone. The moment you crack open that phone and start tinkering with it, other things and other issues could arise, and you've kind of broken the mold of whatever those guardrails existed when those models were created by adding your own content and information on it. And so within an organization, you really do need to have a team of people that are dedicated to make sure that those modifications, those small models that you're creating don't have those biases built in.
Yeah. Anyone else wants to take a stab at it?
I would just say from an ethics point of view, having an informed consent from whoever's data I'm using to train my model. That's something that's lying at the cusp of HR and IT right now. People should be aware of what data is the company using to come up with certain other information, which is using AI.
Yeah. Otherwise, no trust on the insights, right? No one's going to be excited or even take the insights.
And if I'm using your personal data,
Exactly.
and all our laws ask us to be very consensual and very transparent in that matter. So I think sitting at the cusp of legal and sort of legal responsibilities, compliance, and ethics is going to be consent.
Yeah, I was looking at the poll result, right? The first two polls, it was very clear that organizations, I think people are still not confident, right? Everyone's using one or the other AI tool, right? Be it chat GPTs or the Mid Journeys or the Claude and all of that. But organizations adopting it and kind of for the entire set of employees, I think is still not very confident. I think one thing that I keep stressing in all such AI panels is that I think orgs have to be ethically ready. And when I say that, I think there are multiple facets to it, right? Like what you mentioned now, legally ready, right? Know the laws of the land, ensure that the compliances are met, ensure that the data protection laws are met. Of course, tech ready, no doubt. They can't be half-baked. They definitely have to be experts or use expert agencies and tools. Culturally and emotionally ready, right? As an organization, are you emotionally and culturally ready to start adopting? I think this is very important, and only then I think it trickles down to the employees' confidence. Right? Yep. That's all we had. I think that's a wrap. Sorry, Patricia, were you about to add on any point here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the point. So there was one mention anonymously about on the Q&A about the fact that whenever we prompt something, we are actually training AI. And this is a very important point. I don't know, for those of you who have noticed, for example, LinkedIn keeps asking, you are one of the experts have been invited. And initially I was really responding, and I mean, it's up to each one of us to decide. Right now, for example, I don't respond any longer because this is exactly what is happening, right? We are training their algorithm. And of course, it's super nice that all of us are given the chance, but in the end of the day, you don't know how are the experts or who are the experts that are training this, and they're going to be, in the end of the day, giving the answers. And the question is how you can protect the data, right? The person asked this, how can I protect my HR data that is not compromised? I don't know if there is a single magic answer to that, but knowing where the server is stored, knowing where the data is being stored, knowing how the data is being handled, how the organization that is handling your data is compliant to the current regulation, those are all the possible solutions. And just to take from Laura, she asked, how can we use AI to support neurodivergent employees? There is one company, probably in the US you have as well. They are in Rotterdam. They are using virtual reality to exemplify what is the life of a minority. And they have several use cases. They have an LGBT use case. They have a race use case, a woman, and neurodivergent. When I did the experience, I was using literally the lens of somebody with autism, and you really experience the whole experience, sorry to repeat the word, of that individual who has autism at a party. So you literally put the lens of these people. This was a very interesting experience. I share with as many people as possible. Also, for those that use Teams, I'm pretty sure the Zoom, Google Meet, they have the same. But I follow the VP of accessibility for Microsoft. And if you see, for those that have been using Teams for a long period of time, the evolution they had in terms of accessibility in the tool is fantastic. You have a speaker coach to make sure that you are using inclusive language. You can use, of course, the closed captions. You have, for the people that have visible disability, disability, you can use contrast. So there are several tools or features that Microsoft has been including. I cannot speak for Zoom because I'm not very familiar as a host, just to help with inclusion of disabled people. So those are some of the suggestions.
Amazing, amazing examples. Thank you, Patricia. Thanks, Ginger, and thanks, Diljot. Thank you, Shambhavi. Over to you. I think this has been a wonderful panel discussion.